Meta has seen it's kind of linked to X to be fair. There's been a large increase in Threads downloads over the last couple of months, and Social Media Today, which is one of the sources I use for this show, has said in an article that the conversation was around would Threads eventually take over X in regards to user base and etc. And there's a couple of points I would like to make on that in the article that I'll leave in the description along with all the other sources down below. It says, and I quote, "Well, as in a long enough time span, sure, Threads is in pace at present to end quote to continue to grow in such a way where in a long enough time span you would be in a position where yes, absolutely there could be an overtake in regards to monthly users." Now, something to consider about Threads specifically is that when Meta launched it, they pushed it out to the already established Instagram account reality, right? So all the people with Instagram accounts, which at the moment, at the time of reading and recording, it's 2.4 billion active users, right? So that's already a leg up. Now, I suppose the counter argument, now I think about it, is that there was already people on Twitter, right? So yes, you could make that argument, but it is in growth, sure. But if we look at the monthly users, which for Threads at the time of recording is 200 million monthly users, close to X's 600 million monthly users. That's a 400 million difference in regards to viewership and analytics, and people now, of course, this is going to be across globally, and we need to, in advertising or when we put our content out there, we need to look at where is the demographic that we're talking about, these kind of things. But if you just look at the overarching numbers, you've got one platform that's in theory growing or is gaining some level of momentum, with Mark Zuckerberg and Meta really pushing it as another option as for strong written content like X is, or like formerly what Twitter was. But there is still a disparity of 400 million users. Right now, will Threads potentially catch that up? Potentially, yeah, sure. But as the article implies, how long is this time span going to be? Are people going to necessarily still be as interested in news and journalism and etc.? And there's some talks about why X wasn't in that specific infographic and that kind of download chart, and it's actually because of the way that X is actually broadcast or counts itself inside the iOS App Store as a news app rather than a social media app. So where does it sit? Should X be classed as a social media app? The Twitter or X, they're the same thing, but formerly Twitter, it was always used and always believed to be used for politics and journalism. And conversation. And Elon then bought it and turned it into this open conversation among adults in 95% of cases. In my view, I don't think children should be on it, of course, and I think that that is something else, and we need to protect our children, of course, online. But I think there is a level of acceptable reality when it comes to having an open town square, right? We've seen the rise of Rumble that I'm potentially going to be talking about in shows moving forward as well, and seeing what happens in the news cycle. It may bring in some other platforms if I feel relevant and I feel I can add some value to discussing it. But, the question is kind of off to you then, is do you feel that freedom of speech is important? And if so, do we need a social media or multiple social medias to be in a position where we can actually have an open town square style, kind of in theory, all things go, you can articulate your view, and then it's kind of up to the person consuming it. You could make the argument, say, to fact check that, make sure that's, actually factually true. And, if you're speaking about facts, or you're speaking about a moderate thing, like there was a lot of talk when the riots happened in the UK about who did it before the police put it out, and etc. And, are we validating that conversation? Are we saying, yes, absolutely, this is true? And is it up to us to fact check those things if we consume that information, or is it down to the person posting? You know, I did a written post around the time asking this question. I don't know the answer, but I pose the question again to you. Whose responsibility is it to fact check or make sure that we can look at the information that is being shared online, right? There is obviously misinformation. There is then things that are not technically true. And then there is research, realities, where we point at scientific papers, we point at articles, we point at publications, right? But is it an opinion which is not liked, but is still factually true? Or is it actually just falsehood, right? And where does this sit in regards to how much or how little censorship these platforms are? And is the internet a space to have that, right? And I think that's the important point about because there has been talk about X being very right-leaning and not very brand safe, you could say, and it is in turmoil regarding its finances because of this fact, because it is trying to champion freedom of speech, because it is trying to champion the concept of an open town square on the internet. But would Threads be a competitor? Clearly it's growing, so should a business look at potentially using their written content and maybe putting it on both? Who knows? The only thing that's going to see, and the only thing that we're going to be able to see, is what happens in time, right? But at the moment, at the time of filming, there is a £400 million disparity in, 400 million user disparity in the two, right? So one has 200 million, the other has 600 million monthly users. So which has a larger audience, which has a likelihood that it's going to be a part of your target demographic to talk to and add value to,